We're in this series called Clear the Stage. And we've kind of cleared off the stage. Normally we've got all these instruments and all this, and we're gonna crank back into that. But I think sometimes you gotta change pace. You gotta sort of switch it up. You know, sometimes in the series of messages, like a collection of messages, I'll pick a theme and preach on that theme. So like our last one was called The Secret Sauce, which was all about conflict. It was about reframing conflict. If you think conflict is a bad thing, you'll avoid it and you'll miss an opportunity to solve problems, grow, and bond. It's actually, if you get good at conflict, is how you actually fix things. And really it can become like glue in a key relationship. And I think it's one of the things we're not necessarily great at as like a culture. And so we took some time to talk about that. So the whole thing was about conflict. Well, this series, what's it about? Clear the Stage. It's really about clearing out the clutter in your life, clearing out the noise, changing pace, slowing down, and really listening to what God would have to say to each one of us. What God would say to us individually and what God would say to us collectively. And I think sometimes if we'll shift gears and we'll slow it down, we'll start to see things that God's trying to show us or hear things God's trying to say to us that we wouldn't if we kept up the fever pitch. So we're doing that as a group, but you know, it's a good discipline to have in general to kind of retreat every once in a while to find a quiet place. Jesus, who was fully God, fully man, did it. He'd go off to a quiet place because even for him, things were getting a little too noisy. And so that's what we're doing here. I want to share with you some things that God's been doing in my life. And as I share them, I'm going to share some personal things. But I want you to really understand what I'm doing with this, okay? I'm not up here, telling you because I'm lonely and I need somebody to talk to. I'm really not up here. It's not necessarily about my situation. What I'm trying to do is take my situation and help us all learn from it. Let's pull out what's the salient point. What's the thing that, okay, as we, like, because you can just take my thing out of it and put yours in. And go, okay, how does this apply to yours? But I'm kind of using the journey God's taken me on. And you know, here's what I've really learned about leadership. And when I say leadership, I mean anywhere you have influence. Okay, that can be in your home, it could be on the job, it could be in your community, your neighborhood. Anywhere that people are looking up to you or you have influence in their life. As a leader, a lot of times we gravitate to teaching, training, and focusing on our strengths. Okay, if you're good at something, if you have a skill in an area, that would be an area you would be very confident to step up to the people around you and go, here's how you do it. Okay, I've codified how to do this thing and I want to show you how to do it. If you're a dad and you're good at fixing cars, you might invite your children to come sit and like, here's what this does and here's what that does and this is a piston and that's all I know actually. But that's sad but true. Okay, so like this is how this works, and you would train and teach according to your strength. But what we tend to do is avoid the areas where we're not competent, avoid our weaknesses, right? So let's say you're good with cars, but you're bad with money. Okay, if you're bad with money, you're probably not inclined to go to your kids and start talking to them about money because deep down you know you're not very good with money. You either don't have a budget or you have a budget on paper, but you don't manage the budget well. Maybe you're an impulsive spender. You don't have good systems and processes around your money. So this is how issues sort of go generation to generation, you know? Sometimes we blame the devil for stuff that's, it's a generational curse. No, you keep spending your money bad. And then you didn't, nobody decided, I'm gonna figure it out. Okay, devil's on my money. No, you're on your money. You're on your money. You're the one who keeps scanning that card and with no clue of how you're going to do it. I mean, it's just, okay, 2 minus 3 is -1 every time. And so instead of going, you know what, I'm going to step up and fix it. I'm going to step up to the plate. I mean, imagine this. Imagine as a parent, imagine this conversation. Imagine you're a kid and your parent comes to you and says, hey, I got to tell you something. Mom or dad comes to you. I'm going to tell you something. I'm not very good with money. I'm not good with money. No one really taught me. No one really trained me. But it's money. It's math. We can do this. I can figure this out. And here's the deal. You're 10 years old, and I want you to have a better life than I did. I want you to get this before I did, because here I am in my 40s, and I'm not good with money. And I don't want you to have to wait till your 40s. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to admit I'm not good with money. And you and I are going to go on a journey together. We're going to take a course together. We're going to read a book together. We're going to figure out how to make a budget, how to stick to a budget, we're going to get good with money, and we're going to go together. Could you imagine? that would be the most profound lesson of your life. As a kid, you wouldn't lose respect for your parent. By the way, parents, we try to hide stuff from our kids like they don't know. Like they didn't know you were good with money. They knew that you weren't. So to admit it and then to walk through it together, by the way, you know what they would do? They would not only get good at money, they would apply the same behavior to every area of life. At some point in their life, when they realized they weren't good at something, instead of trying to hide it, they would admit it. And then they would not only go on a journey of getting good at it, they'd take somebody with them. That's what I'm going to do today. Today, I'm going to tell you about an area I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that I've been better in my theology than I have been in my practice. There's a gap between what I've been able to teach and train and talk about, pontificate about, give a monologue about, and then how it actually manifests in my life. And I'm going to just be straight up with you. It's a little embarrassing, but whatever. I'm not good at it. And I'm going to show you the things that I've done. I'm going to show you what I've learned and the changes I'm making. All right? And it's going to be on the subject of prayer. Some of you are like, this dude doesn't pray good and he's a pastor? What am I doing here? Okay. I told you guys, I talked a little bit the last few weeks about my sons. Both of my sons have autism. My first son, Hudson, when he had his birthday last week, just turned 10. When he was diagnosed with autism, I was determined to pray down fire from heaven and pray in a healing. So every night I'd put him to bed, I would lay my hands on his head and I would just pray with all the faith I could muster. And it was intense. Like, because I thought maybe if I power up, like the Bible talks about faith and the faith the size of a mustard seed, but I'm going to have the faith the size of a watermelon seed. Okay, like I'm really going in. And so I tried to power up and I'd pray and I'd like wrinkle up my forehead and clench my diaphragm and I would just pray. And then I would try to talk God into what I wanted him to do. And I used his word against him. Okay, so I'm using the Bible to try to corner God into a miracle. What an idiot, but I did. And so I would be in there and I'd be praying. I'm like, Lord, you know John chapter 9, Lord, you remember? You read that thing too, right? John chapter 9, when there was a blind man on the side of the road and Jesus and the disciples are walking past him and the disciples say to Jesus, why is this man blind? Did he sin or did his parents sin? And Jesus goes, neither of them. Nobody sinned. This man was blind so that God's power may be manifest in him. And Jesus healed the blind man in the moment. And I'm praying for my son. And I'm like, John 9 would look real good right now in this day and age. And he's not blind, he's got autism. But if you did the thing so that your power would be manifest, and then everybody would see that he went from having autism to not having autism, it would be the same thing. And so I prayed, full of faith, naming and claiming scriptures night after night. And he didn't get better, he got worse. And I lost steam. And at some point, I quit praying for him to be healed. When my son Miles was diagnosed, it was months and months before I realized I hadn't prayed for him to be healed. Not a single time. And it wasn't like I was trying to stick it to the man or whatever. It was really, I just didn't see that as any sort of path toward healing. And at some point, if I'm going to have my integrity, I got to wrestle this thing to the ground. And I've talked about this before in church where eventually I got to a place where with my son Miles, I prayed for one prayer for healing. And it was basically, this is a paraphrase, but it was like, God, you made the world. So I know you can heal him. You and I both know you're able to heal this kid. If you want to, cool. If not, fine. Just help me be a good dad. Okay, that's kind of basically what it was. And so I stopped praying. And what I realize is in my practice, I was looking at prayer through a very narrow lens, and I was missing a lot of the broad, like the breadth of prayer and the purpose of prayer. And the reason is because I saw prayer, the purpose of prayer, focused primarily just on God's power. Okay? God's power. God, you're omnipotent. You created the world. I've got a problem. You can solve it. I got a problem. You can solve it. I got a problem. You can solve it. And of course, in my logic, I can't imagine a good person who could provide a solution for somebody who had it within their power to do it. The problem's right there. You can solve it and not solve it, and they still be good. Right? If you need $10 and I've got $100 and you've got a major issue and my $10 can solve your problem and I keep it, that's kind of weird. So even at the root of it was a little bit of the goodness of God. I still believe he's good. And so because of that, I stopped praying for a while to try to get my bearings. By the way, God is powerful. God is omnipotent. God is able to do all things. And it's okay to pray for his power. That's not wrong to do. Paul talks about that. He says, hey, don't be anxious for anything. In other words, when you feel anxiety, he says, pray. Be anxious for nothing. Pray about everything. Tell God what you need is his next line. Tell God what you need. Announce to God what you need. When Jesus was teaching us how to pray in the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What does he say next? Give us this day our daily bread. God, I need a solution. I need your provision. I need your power. We can come boldly before God's throne. There's nothing wrong with praying for his power. I advise you to do so. It's one of the things that you pray for. It's part of prayer. But to me, in my season of life, and frankly, the way I was looking at the utility of prayer, it really just got down to God's power. God, I need your power. God, I'm powerless to fix autism. I'm powerless, but you're not. So are we going to do this or not? And if it's a no, now I'm going to fend for myself. I'll make the best out of this. And as I took time to kind of circle back and go, man, I got to wrestle this to the ground because I want to grow through this, right? Just like the parent who was saying, I'm not good with money, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to take people on a journey. I had to come back and go, I want to deepen my faith and I want to deepen what I know and understand about prayer. And the Lord led me to Psalm 3. Okay, I'm gonna read this whole thing to you, then we're gonna go back and deconstruct it, and we're gonna have a more robust picture of what a prayer life should actually look like, and what is the utility of prayer, what is the purpose. Okay, here we go. Psalm 3, 1-8 says this, and this is, by the way, David, who would eventually be, who was king actually when he wrote this. He said, "Oh Lord, I have so many enemies, so many are against me. So many are saying, God will never rescue him. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me. You are my glory, the one who holds my head high. I cried out to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy mountain." Verse 5, I lay down and slept, yet I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. I'm not afraid of 10,000 enemies who surround me on every side. Arise, O Lord, rescue me, my God. Slap all my enemies in the face. Been there? You're like, I don't want you to I don't want it to be too, just slap him in the face. Well, then look at this one. Shatter the teeth of the wicked. Oh, yeah. This is why you got to read your Bible, dude. This stuff's in here. It is so good. Verse 8. Victory comes from you, O Lord. May you bless your people. All right, let's go back. Let's look at what David is teaching us here. In verse 1 and 2, we see David processing. Oh Lord, I have so many enemies. So many are against me. So many are saying God will never rescue him. He's processing. When you're going through something that feels chaotic, you got to process. You got to process. How many of you, when it comes to like chaos, you're emotional, you're trying to figure out a situation, you're trying to make a good decision, you process in your head, internally. You go quiet, you go inside, you don't want to talk about it, I don't want to say anything. If people start pressing you for an answer, you're like, I need some, back it up. Okay, I need a little space, I need to go quiet, I need some me time so I can sort it out. How many of you, by a show of hands, are internal processors? Go ahead and hold it up, all right? You're like, I got to process before I answer. All right, how many of you are external processors? You're like, nah, man, when I got something, I gotta talk it out. I gotta work it out. Let me see the external processor. That is me. I'm gonna hug you right now. All right, that's me. In fact, I've had to get to that when I work with the people around me, I have to announce to them what I'm doing. So I'll say, hey, I don't know what I believe right now, so I just need to process. Because I've been known to process in 5 minutes into a 180. All right, like, hey guys, we need to do this. 100% sure this is, and I'm like, well, hold on a second, now maybe it may not be. And then it's eventually, I'm like, no, this is a terrible idea, let's not do this at all. I'm so crazy, I'm such an external processor. I've been known to process into a 360 actually. We're gonna do this, okay, no, it's a terrible idea. No, we're definitely not gonna do that, so well, actually, you know, now that I think about it, I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Okay, and people are like, dude. So what I've had to do is tell them, hey, I'm gonna process for a minute, okay? Because I gotta get my thoughts out. When you think about prayer, part of the utility of prayer is you processing with God. David's processing in verse 1 and 2. Lord, my enemies are against me. He's not informing God of something he didn't know. Lord, everybody's against, it's me against the world, God. He's processing his feelings. He's processing his situation. And so this is the cool thing about God, because he's a spirit, you can process internally or externally. You can invite God into your processing as you're thinking it through. If you're an internal processor, as you're thinking, pray, invite God in. Lord, would you come into my thoughts right now? Lord, would you help me orient my thoughts right now? It's just not you and your mind thinking and hopefully I can sort it out. If that's the case, then the best you can do is the best you can do. But if I invite God into my processing, the best I can do is the best he can do. And he can actually come in and help you orient and create order in your thoughts and come to a better conclusion. If you're an external processor, you can externally process with God. To say it out loud, you gotta be careful where you do it. People think you're crazy that you're talking to yourself, but you find a quiet place and you process, or you find a brother or sister in Christ, part of the body of Christ, to get somebody to go, let's pray and process together. So he invited God in his processing. The second thing is, look what he says here. It's the presence of God. In verse 3 and 4, he says, you, O Lord, are a shield around me. Now, this is what David understood, was that God as a spirit wasn't a physical shield. Like, it wasn't something he could see. So the fact that you can't see it, right? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. I can't see it. So the fact I can't see it, he used a verbal to remind himself of the presence of God. No, God, it feels like I'm alone. It feels like you're not here. But he said, you, O Lord, are a shield. He used a physical picture of something to remind him of the presence of God. He says, you're my glory. You're the one who holds my head high. God, it feels like it's me against the world in verse 1 and 2. But he said, no. You're the lifter of my head. He says in verse 4, I cried to the Lord and he answered me from his holy mountain. Did God verbally answer him? No, God didn't verbally answer him, but he's saying God's with me and he's giving me solutions even in my mind. God's providing a way for me. And so he was reminded of, second, the utility of prayer is the presence of God. The presence of God. That God is an ever-present help in time of need. That God is with you. The third component is perspective. Perspective. Look what it says here in verse 5. He says, I lay down and slept. Now, hold on a second. Before I read it, think context. First two verses as he's processing, he's saying, I'm all alone. It's me against the world. Everybody's against me. Look what he says in verse 5. He gives himself some perspective. Although I feel like I'm alone, no, he's a shield with me. And he says in verse 5, I lay down and slept. Yet I woke up in safety. In other words, when I was laying there drooling on myself, God, you were keeping me alive. You were holding me together. You were doing work when I was in a catatonic state. You were busy. You were working. You brought me out. And he said, I woke up in safety, for the Lord was watching over me. That's perspective. There's things going on I don't see and I don't feel. Verse 6, he said, I'm not afraid. Look at this. I'm not afraid of 10,000 enemies who surround me on every side. As he's processing, I got 10,000 enemies. As he gains perspective, God as a shield and God as a provider and God as a protector, he says, hey, I'm not going to be afraid of 10,000 enemies who surround me. So he's able to find perspective. As you pray, you're going to find that if you'll go broader than just power God, I need you to solve my problem. There's a broader utility to prayer that actually God will give you perspective. There's another Old Testament book. It's the book of Job. Quick summary. This guy Job has the worst day you could possibly imagine. In one fell swoop, he loses his business. He loses his children, his whole family. Everybody dies in a tragic situation. And it's a 42 chapter book. And for 37 chapters, Job is processing. He starts with some bad theology. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away, but you know what? I'm going to keep my chin up. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. God took my kids. God's a taker. He must be a taker. God must not know what he wants to do. Does he want to give? Does he want to take? I don't know. He's processing. He's in denial for a while. His wife is working through her emotions, and we get a front row seat. His wife is like, this is so ridiculous. If God's even real, you ought to curse him and die. He's like, oh, man, I feel you, but I can't really do that. Then his friends come around and they're like, you must have done something stupid, man. There's no way God would just do this unless you're like you got some closet sin. So he's sitting there going, what did I do? I mean, maybe I did do something. I mean, for 37 chapters, then he just sort of kind of processes with God. God, I don't know what to think about you anymore. I thought all these things I had were blessings from you. I thought my kids were a blessing from you. I thought my business was a blessing from you. I thought this was all a blessing, and now it's all been taken. Like, I don't know. Is it me? Is it you? What do I do? And so he says, bah, 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 bah. For 37 chapters, God doesn't say anything. 37 chapters of processing. God is quiet because it took his processing to get to where he was even open to a new perspective. So in chapter 38, God begins to speak to him, and he gives him new information, and he shows him a new point of view. And look at this in verse 42, in the last chapter of the book of Job. Here's what Job says. He said, surely I spoke of things I did not understand. He's saying all the way for 37 chapters, I was talking about stuff I didn't understand, things too wonderful for me to know. He said, you said, listen, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Look at this, verse 5. He said, my ears have heard of you, I had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. I had heard of you. I knew you theologically. I could explain, I heard of your reputation, but in the process of my painful journey of 37 chapters, he said, I have actually experienced now your presence, and now I have gained a different perspective. He said, before I talked about things I didn't even know about. And what he learned to value through the whole journey was perspective. The last two verses of Psalm 3, 1 through 8, 7 and 8, he calls on God for power. Look what David says here in verse 7. He says, arise, O Lord, rescue me, my God, slap my enemies in the face, shatter the teeth of the wicked. Victory comes from you. So he's asking God to beat back his enemy. He's asking God to deliver a victory. Now, a little bit of context. Who are these enemies that David is facing? If you have your physical Bible, if you look at the top of Psalm 3, most translations will have a little context of when he prayed this prayer. So if you think of the Bible, the genres of the Bible's 66 books. Don't think of it as one book, think of it as 66 books that have a variety of genres. That's important to know contextually, because when you're reading the Bible, you have to know what genre you're reading to even know how to apply it or what to do with it. So what we're reading in Psalm is wisdom literature, poetic books and wisdom literature. So we have David who's doing that, and then we have also ability to cross-reference into 1st and 2nd Samuel, which are historical books. David writes this historically during somewhere between 2 Samuel 15 and 2 Samuel 18. Somewhere in there. And here's what's going on. In 2 Samuel 15, his son Absalom decides to try to dethrone his father, to raise up a coup and to rebel. Okay? If anybody raised up a coup and rebelled, that would be a big enough problem, but imagine the emotional intensity of it being your blood son who's doing this, who's trying to kill you. So somewhere around 2 Samuel 15, Absalom raises up an army. He raises up a group to become adversity to his father. They come to oppose him. And this is when David writes this. So when David's talking about slapping somebody in the face or shattering their teeth, he's talking about his son. His son and all of his cohorts. Slap my son in the face, Lord. Shatter his teeth. I mean, this is some deep stuff. And what's interesting is in 2 Samuel 18, his son dies in battle. And so they come back to report it to David. Your son is dead. And it says in 2 Samuel 18:33, the king was overcome with emotion. He went up to the room over the gateway and he burst into tears. And as he went, he cried, oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom. If only I had died instead of you, oh, Absalom, my son, my son. So now David is back to where he was in Psalm 3, which is back calling on the presence of God. He's got a different perspective. In 2 Samuel 15, he's going, bust him in the face. Put him in his place. And in 2 Samuel 18, now it's like he died. He's going, I wanted you to slap him in the face. I didn't want him to die. But now he's in this position where now life has switched. Life has changed. Now I got a new thing to come back to God. God, I got to process. Myself as a dad. I got to process my past. I got to make peace with my past. I need healing in the present. God, I need your presence. He's not coming back from the dead, but God, I need you with me. David, same guy that wrote, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. I need you to restore my soul. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, grief, I know you're with me. I'll fear no evil, for you're with. I need your presence and I need your perspective. And what do I do now? And where do I go from here? And God, I need your power. So friend, learn from my mistake. For quite a long time, with some of the things I was walking through, I had a very narrow view of prayer. I could have taught theologically all these concepts, but when it came to what I actually did, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with my own kids, my own family, my own pain, my own situation, I had a pretty immature view, and it basically got down to this. God, I need you in my situation. I need you to solve my problem. And I missed the more robust view of prayer, of what it really accomplishes, what's really amazing about it. I was going to God for solutions, when really the greatest thing about prayer is intimacy. Solutions are great. In one chapter of your life, you're gonna need a solution. You're gonna need somebody's teeth chattered. In another season of life, you're gonna need God to help you pick up the pieces and deal with your grief. The solutions will change over time. And God has a way of showing up with what you need when you need it. But if you only see it that way, you miss the greatest value. The greatest value, which is God showing up with his presence, God giving a better perspective, God helping you see through his lens or someone else's lens, God processing with you, jumping in with you in your thought, in your confusion, in the gap between your theology and your practice. And you're going, God, am I a hypocrite? What's up? I don't even know what to believe anymore. Instead of going, I'm gonna figure out what I believe, then I'm gonna go to God, say, God, come with me while I'm trying to figure out what I believe. Invite him into the process. So here, I'm gonna tell you the change I've made. Encourage you to do the same. You can do whatever you want. But here's the change I've made. I'm back to praying for a miracle for my boys. I'm back to praying for a miracle. I'm back to believing for a miracle. But that's not all I'm praying for. I'm praying a broader prayer, a bigger prayer. I'm entering into the intimacy and the relationship with God and saying, I'm gonna ask every day for a miracle. I'm gonna ask every day for a miracle, but I'm also gonna process my whole situation. And I'm not just gonna do it with friends, and I'm not just gonna do it in the privacy of my own mind. I'm gonna pray at the throne of his grace. Come boldly before the throne of grace where you'll find God receiving you in time of need. So I'm processing with God. At times I'm just resting in his presence. Lord, help me aware. I know theologically you're omnipresent, but God, today I just rest in your presence. God, I thank you that when I'm walking through this, I'm not by myself. As I'm watching their back, you're watching my back. Your presence and perspective. God, help me to see bigger. Help me to see broader. So here's what I want to do. I want us to take the next few minutes, because take me and my situation out of it. Put yourself, okay, what's God saying to you about you? Where do you need to broaden out? I think every prayer needs to have all of this. I think every prayer needs to have all this. Pray for his power, but pray for his perspective. Embrace his presence. So I'm going to invite at this time, I want to just take a moment to receive ministry today. So I'm going to invite our prayer team actually to stand up and come forward at this time. And today, whatever you're walking through, maybe it's a solution that you need from God, or maybe it's an awareness of these other things. Today, maybe you'll walk out of here and God will deal with your issue and do a miracle. Or maybe today God will send you out of here with a different perspective, or maybe just a reminder of his presence, or maybe a moment of processing. Our team's here today to minister to you. Here's what I want to encourage you to respond the next few minutes. You can stay seated, just interact with the Lord all by yourself. You might want to stand up to your feet, even to change positions. Even maybe that's your step of faith, just even a physical posture to stand. But also the church, we're here today as the body of Christ in another way to bring an aspect of God's presence. The hands and the voice of Jesus. I called a friend this week and prayed for him over the phone because he needed to hear a voice. I could have just prayed for him and texted him, I prayed for you. Sometimes I do that, but he needed to hear a voice, so I called him. Sometimes you need to hear a voice. So our team is here today. Whatever you're walking through, take a moment and pray a bigger